After school here. Here's my rundown on the 3.27 patch notes, Path of Exile 1. Looking like a really interesting league with a lot of new stuff. Patch notes surprisingly free of nerfs. There are some, of course, but uh, I think it's kind of a departure from what we've seen in previous leagues. And with some of the additions, it'll be pretty interesting to see where this league goes. A lot is unknown at this point, so it's kind of hard to say how some of this might play out. I'm focused here on minions and the stuff mainly in the game that means the most to me, is most interesting to me. But I've also included some other items that just kind of piqued my interest and might be worth looking into. So for the big items in this asynchronous trade, beginning in Act 6, this is something that GGG was extremely resistant to adding to the game, even though players asked for it for a very long time. And then suddenly they added it to Path of Exile 2. Huge hit. It's just so good. And it's being coming to Path of Exile 1. I think this is probably the best change of the league. I think other parts of the league will be really cool, but this is just such a quality of life item for Path of Exile 1 if you play in Trade League. Low price items will be available the whole league. Prices for some common items probably be better. Um, for the really hard to get items, well, I guess we'll see how that works out. But my experience with asynchronous trade from Path of Exile 2, I think this is going to be a huge addition to Path of Exile 1. Long, long, long overdue. So next, I don't know much about it, but it's the Bloodline Second Ascendancy. You're going to be able to choose a second Ascendancy class. Apparently, it's customizable. You can choose what you want for your character. You have to defeat bosses in the game to unlock this per character. So that can be a pretty big challenge for some types of characters, for some types of bosses. That will be interesting to see how it works out. They revealed, I think one of these had to do with Val skills and looks interesting, sounds interesting. I don't really feel like I know enough to guess at how it's going to work out, but it only feels like a big addition of power to most characters. That would be my guess. Some other miscellaneous items here. Spell suppression's a little bit worse. 10% of extra damage. I don't really play spell suppression characters, so I don't know how significant this is, but it seems like 10% more damage from spells, which isn't great. Or is it 20%? Yeah, math. Anyways, it's more. It's worse. Val Breach will be unobtainable. So this is kind of an unusual skill that allowed you to summon breach monsters at any point as part of a skill. And it was really helpful for some boss encounters if you had something like Chieftain's explode node on the ascendancy, blanking on the name of it offhand. But if you could cause the explosion to occur on one of these breach mobs, well, then that damage, of course, would be transferred to the boss. And it was a mixed blessing because, well, you're filling up your arena with mobs, and you can actually summon some difficult ones. So can actually make your life worse. But generally, this is kind of a quirky little gem that had some application, and it'll be gone because of the changes to Breach. Say la vie. At series rule unique staff, I don't really know anything about it, but the buffs, numeric buffs that they've applied to it sound crazy. So it might be worth looking at. I really don't know a thing about it, but at some point, I will see what's going on with it, and perhaps it's worth building around. Some quality of life stuff. You don't have to buy bestiary orbs anymore. This is pretty nice if you farm beasts. This combined with asynchronous trade will make beast farming probably popular this league and kind of a lot more fun and a little bit more convenient, a little bit cheaper. So that's kind of a nice change. Um, Full passive tree refund for gold. So I this is fine. This is a nice quality of life. I don't really see a huge benefit to it, honestly. It's not that big of a deal to respec your tree if you need to. So being able to do it all at once, perhaps at extra cost, I don't know. Is it really um, that significant? I don't know. Sort of strange to me that they didn't include this already in the game, but we have it now, so that's just better. Opening Blight chest opens nearby Blight chest. This is pretty nice. If you farm Blight, there is a lot of clicking involved. Now, this will reduce the amount of clicks you have to do to open the chest in the map, but it's not going to change clicking on the loot, which looting in the Blight map sometimes takes as much time as running it, depending on the circumstances and your item filter. But nonetheless, this is nice. I used to be able to get this on the casting mastery. If you had a fast casting uh, skill, you could use that to open chest, which was it was okay. It was convenient, but I don't know. This is a small improvement. Why not? So we can mass ID items in our inventory at NPCs now. So the need for ID scrolls is less, similar to what we have in Path of Exile 2. It's fine. Outside of early league, identifying items with item ID scrolls, I don't know, isn't that big of a deal. So a little bit of quality of life, we'll take it. Why not? You don't have to level your rogues in Rogue Harbor anymore if you want to run heist. Again, this is one that really wasn't a challenge. The only difficulty you had with it is if you try to do this later in the league and you need low level heist to be able to get your rogues started in the leveling process. So it'll take that annoyance away. And I don't know, the leveling part, it was quite fast. If you're really doing any amount of heist at all, it was very easy to level up your rogue. So again, nice but small quality of life. Why not? And always they have continued to incrementally improve sound art effects in the environments. Honestly, I love this because the game just keeps looking better and better, sounding better and better um, over time. It's really impressive what GGG does with a free update to the game. To get this in any other game, right, you're paying for some kind of DLC, maybe even buying a whole new version of the game, and they just do it. And I think the game is really looking great these days. So major props to GGG. I can't. It's just amazing what they do. All right, so minion changes. Main thing that I'm concerned about because I always play minions. I play other characters too, but yeah, majority of my characters are minion builds. So Elementalist, Legion of the Primordial, now 50% Golem buff instead of 100. That's a bummer, but not surprising. This Golementalist builds last time around were pretty strong, pretty great. Not super strong, not super powerful. I don't know. They were really meta. Maybe they were. I wasn't paying attention too much. I just kind of do my own thing. So maybe other people really overuse this, overabuse this. So reducing the golem buff effect is probably the least surprising thing in these patch notes. Improvement to Corpse Pack and the Necromancer. I've tried to build around this for a lot of different builds, and it's pretty difficult to make this work well. Um, unless you're doing something like self-cast, detonate dead, that works actually pretty well with this. I assume most people take this ascendancy node if they're playing that skill. And basically, each time you consume a corpse, you're increasing your attack or cast speed, your cast speed in that case. Doubling this is actually really nice. So it might make some of those builds I've tried to do in the past more viable because it's always about how many corpses can you create and consume? Can you consume them fast enough? Can you sustain this increase to attack and cast speed or not? And the answer is usually no, except a few kind of edge cases like that self-cast detonate dead. So I'll be, I will definitely try something with using this leak. Minion accuracy gone. Minions always hit. This is really nice. Just a convenience, really. It's kind of a more quality of life. It wasn't that hard to build minion accuracy. It's just kind of more of an annoyance. It's an extra affix on gear that you had to deal with, to contend with, made items more difficult to obtain, to get all the affixes correct, etc. So just taking it away, this is good quality of life. And instead of the accuracy bonus that we got from the mastery on the passive tree, now we get 20% increased cooldown recovery rate, which is really interesting. And I haven't looked at it, but characters like Holy Relic, it's really crucial that you had enough cooldown recovery rate to make the build function. There are certain breakpoints you had to hit, and it could get quite difficult to achieve high cooldown recovery rate. So just having this on the tree for 1 point for a cluster you're probably already going to take is pretty nice, it seems to me. So other minions that would benefit from this would be zombie slams, I would think. Stone Golem Slam. I'm sure there are others I'm not really thinking of offhand right now. So this is pretty nice. I mean, this makes me happier than losing accuracy or having to get accuracy. Grave Pact is now chaos resistance. So for minions, I assume. This Grave Pact is always kind of in a somewhat awkward place for some trees, minion trees. So not having the path down to it is pretty nice. I don't know if this chaos resistance in that location is really something that's very necessary anyways. So um, I guess it's there as an option if you need it, but it seems like you'd just be able to skip it and have a better tree. So this is perhaps a pretty nice change for minions after all. All right, specters respawn on changing areas. So if your specters die, instead of having to desecrate and raise them again in your hideout or wherever, they're just going to respawn automatically. Kind of like, somewhat like the animate guardian behavior now. Super nice, super nice. I think part of the resistance people have had to playing some minion builds was like before, if you had an animate guardian with expensive gear on it and it died, you lost it all. It was pretty devastating, and so I think a lot of people just skipped playing builds that relied on animate guardian altogether, or they just went cheap on the gear. And specters, well, having to resummon them for normal specters, not that big of a deal. But for the corpses that you buy, some of them can be quite expensive. And so I'm sure people have avoided using them because they're going to buy this expensive specter and then it just dies and then you have to buy it again. Well, no more of that. So this is pretty great change, really. All right, blink arrow, mirror arrow, I think also 20% less damage. And the duration's 5 seconds and 20 seconds. This is Seems really quite devastating for Link Arrow, Arrow. I haven't played it in a while, but I mean, this seems extreme. So we'll see if it's. I don't think that many people played it to begin with, so even fewer will now, I would guess. Convocations now white gem. That's really nice. So you don't have to worry about socket color. You don't have to worry about attributes. I really like this change. Just it's a little quality of life, basically. Dark Pact, I didn't include the numbers because I don't know what they mean, but it's buffed. And is it better? I have no idea. I don't know if anyone actually plays Dark Pact or not. Volatile Dead also buffed, which is kind of, they used to be pretty cool builds with Spellslinger back some leagues ago. So they're buffed a bit. It seems like pretty significant amount, but considering that it's kind of a dead build, I don't know if that's enough to bring it back to life or not. There's also a buff to Spellslinger, so maybe in together it'll revive the Spellslinger Volatile Dead. Worth looking at. Essence of Fear is now going to give us minion damage on helmets. I guess that's good. We don't need accuracy from it anymore. Void spawn minions summoned by the Servant of Decay unique body armor now deal roughly 100% more damage and have combined life and energy shield 3 times their previous total values. So that's a very, very, very significant numeric increase. I looked in the past league, 3.26 mercenaries. There's 125 people using this item, so it's incredibly unused. I don't know if that means it's these minions are absolutely terrible and now they're buffed up to being just bad, or if this actually brings them up to a level of being good. But there's a huge numeric increases, so it might be worth taking a look at this to see what it does and see if it's useful or not. All right, we got some new skill gens, and I just say I have absolutely no idea if these are going to be good or not. They look pretty cool. Could be fun. I don't know. So hard to say with new skill gems. It's going to be a matter of experimentation. They're not minion gems, so I also will wait before I experiment with them. For crafting, we got some new crafting orbs, basically higher quality Oggs, Regal, Exalts. So this seems like pretty nice quality of life for crafters. If you're alt spamming an item and then you get the perfect tier 1 affix that you were looking for, how many ever alts that just took you 1,000, and then you augment it, you get an absolutely terrible or bad tier affix. It's is not a great feeling. So if you can improve those chances with this and this currency isn't stupidly expensive, then that's pretty cool. Same thing for the Regal. Exalt, I guess, a little bit less um, useful, but still nice to know that you're more likely to get a better result with YOLO Slam. All right, we got some currency for the graphs. You can grow a couple new arms. They do all kinds of crazy things, kind of like the new gems. I have no idea. They look kind of insane, but who's to say? So we'll find out together on that one. All right, in-game changes, tier 17 maps have seemed like they got nerfed in terms of loot. I barely run tier 17s, so I really don't know how much this will affect them. And they can sometimes be corrupted to have 8 modifiers. Joy. That's just what I want, is a corrupted 8 modifier tier 17. I think the problem with tier 17s is they're just kind of a binary yes, no, does this work for your build? And so not being able to control them very much, except for chaos spam. And now if there are corrupted 8 mods, well, what's the chance you're actually going to be able to run it? I guess I don't know. I I find tier 17 maps to be very frustrating. All right, additional bosses from Blight Scarab of Blooming no longer spawn extra monsters in the waves. I've tried this out a couple of times since I really enjoy Blight. And I can't remember exactly using this scarab, but I know some of the scarab scenarios you could end up with pretty insane numbers of monsters in your lanes. So I don't know what this change will really mean, but probably a sensible one. Cartography Scarab of Risk now is a limit of one, previously five. That's kind of a bummer because this is kind of a fun one if you could run it or, take a risk on running it. So now that you can only use one, I don't know. It's kind of killing the idea of it, in my opinion, but probably is too heavily abused. So new maps, or not new maps, but the maps we have this time. The only one I really stood out to me here is Lookout, which I've always had a great fondness for. I mean, it's kind of a stupid map because it's got these narrow pathways in it that are very, very good at killing you. So I don't know why I like it so much, but I just enjoy that map. I'm sure most people don't. All right, skill gem changes. Cyclone, 20% more damage. Cyclone's such a cool skill, but I rarely play it. 20% more damage. I don't know how meaningful that is, but pretty notable, so it might be worth experimenting with. Explosive and poisonous concoction, they've changed a bit. Explosive concoction was a really great skill to level with for the campaign. You really didn't need a weapon. You didn't need an extra flask. You didn't need anything to make it strong. Now they've taken away some of the base damage and they've put it into what it gets from the flasks you have equipped. So having a sapphire or topaz ruby flask equipped are going to change basically or empower this gem now and will probably be necessary. Or maybe you're just using a different leveling skill altogether. I don't know. What I think about is you can probably sell your elemental flasks now during the campaign because people are going to want to use this skill because it's such a popular leveling skill right now. And they're going to need these elemental flasks. So instead of just running explosive concoction yourself, maybe just make sure you have these elemental flasks on your loot filter as good drops and put them into trade to get some early income going. Just an idea. I don't know if it'll work out that way or not, but if I were playing it, that's what I'd do. I'd go to trade and look for the flasks because what's the likelihood that you're going to drop one of these elemental flasks? Well, maybe one some point during the campaign, but if you're using this leveling skill to rapidly level through the campaign, you don't really want to wait for a random chance to maybe drop one. Or I don't know, probably quest rewards. I didn't really think about that. In any case, I'd pick them up, try to sell them, probably make some money. Poisonous concoction. What did they do to this thing? Looks like they reduced that base damage also, and they slightly increased it from what it gets from the flasks. I think everyone used life's flasks with this anyway, so I don't know how these numbers work out numerically, but my guess is poisonous concoctions about the same. And I'd include the transfigured versions of these flasks, but or these gems, but it's kind of all the same across the board. So poisonous concoction, I think, probably no difference. Explosive concoction, you need these elemental flasks now, or probably wouldn't want the elemental flasks now. I never really noticed this ruby flask here. If those numbers are right, doesn't that seem like an insane amount of dot multi? Like really insane amount of dot multi. I don't know. Could be wrong. Okay. Exsanguinate and Reap do 15% more base physical damage per second with a physical damage over time debuff. So that's kind of interesting. The debuff, I believe, is only one part of the skill's damage. 50%, 15% more is pretty decent buff. I think these skills were considered to be okay anyways, so they might actually be pretty solid skills. Oh, the debuff. So my experience with that is with the Scorching Ray of Emulation, which as soon as the Scorching Ray touches a mob, even if, for any amount of time, even if it just sweeps across it and momentarily touches it, it applies this burning debuff, which does damage over time. If these work the same way, then the game is to build duration because each time you hit it, it's going to apply a debuff no matter how briefly you hit it. That will continue to tick damage. And then you can hit it again, apply another debuff. The longer those debuffs last through duration or through something like temp chains, curse effect, the more you can stack them. And it can actually be, even though like Scorching Ray of Emulation, the DP, if you look in Path of Building, its damage doesn't look that great. But when you can stack 4, 5, 6, 10 of its debuffs, that really adds up to be quite a bit of damage. So these might work the same way. I don't know for sure, but it sounds that way. And it's something I'll definitely look into for, perhaps a subsequent character after League start. I would think people probably going to try building around these since exsanguate, I don't know how you say it, was somewhat popular. There were some builds out there for it, and now it's just better. So I'd be surprised if we don't see some build guides popping up for it. It might be worth looking into. All right, Pyrocast mines. So they changed how these work. I really don't know how these numbers add up, but now it deals 35% more damage. I believe people use this skill mainly in the campaign, but this might be a pretty solid skill now. I'm just guessing based on what I know of it and how these numbers look to me. I could be wrong, but I think these are another skill that could be worth taking a look at. All right, Winter Orb. It's just such a cool skill. I've tried building with it and it's been bad, very bad. Is this going to make the difference? I really have no idea. Fires projectiles every 1.2 seconds instead of 1.6. That sounds like a reasonably significant change. 80% more projectile frequency while channeling. Previously 125%. So it's less projectile frequency. I don't know. I have no idea how that adds up, but it's such a cool skill. Maybe it is more viable now. I couldn't even guess. All right, support skill gem changes. Energy leech support no longer has deal more damage while leeching energy shield. Now deal 15 to 24% more damage while in full energy shield at gem levels 1 to 20, previously 10 to 14. So 10% more damage while on full energy shield, which should be most of the time. So that seems like a pretty good change. 10% more, unless I'm not understanding the first line. It just seems like you need to be on full energy shield, which again, you should be. especially if you've got some kind of an energy leech build and it's 10% more damage. Okay. Quality is worth twice as much as well. So that is nice. 10% increased damage for free, basically. So we got a more 10% more multiplier, and we got a additive 10% increased. It seems good. Maybe I'm misreading it. Sadism support, damaging ailments inflicted with supporting skills now deal damage 60 to 98% faster at gem levels 1 to 20, previously 60 to 79. So 20% faster. Okay. Has 70% less duration of ailments inflicted with supported skills, previously 80%. It's just better. And I think it was already an okay support gem, so it's just better. Not bad. Okay. Spellslinger, 30 to 20% less damage versus 37 to 31. So that's a pretty significant change right there. Um, at the top end, what, 11% more damage? I don't know how math works, but that, again, we're talking about um, Spellslinger Volatile Dead. Very popular build before. It's a pretty fun build, really. This combination of the buff to Volatile Dead and to Spellslinger, maybe it makes it viable. I don't know. There's also a change to Poet's Pen. I don't know if that's used with that build or not, but anyways, could be some interesting synergy going on there. As far as Ascendancy's Chieftain, Flames Advance, non-unique jewels cause small and notable. Okay, we got an extra strength. I don't know if anyone used this really, and if they did, does one extra strength make any difference? I don't know. I could be wrong, but it doesn't seem like much of a change. Champion worthy cause, 100% increased duration of banners instead of 50%. Never used it, no idea. Ever since they changed banners, I've just completely ignored them. So, well, you get more duration, so that seems good. Is it good? I have no idea. Assassin got heavily revamped, and I just don't know. Who knows? It's going to take some thinking. Um, the always poison node seemed pretty interesting to me, but I I don't know what to say. That one's going to take some thinking, so I'm not even going to try to say anything about it. Trickster got some nerfs here. I won't go over these specifically, but Heartstopper, it's one of these weird um, skills where it changes what it does, flip flops back and forth between two different things. So you can't really rely on it as a full-time defense against something. And so then to me, it's just kind of a bad node. And I guess you take it as a little bit of a help, but it's not great. And now it's a little less great, a little less not great. I don't know. Um, Soul Drinker no longer has 20% increase in cast speed while leeching energy shield. Okay, just took something away. Did we need 20% attack and cast speed? I mean, that's nice, but I guess it's not the end of the world. Spellbreaker no longer has 20% chance to suppress spell damage, now has prevent 15% of suppressed spell damage while in full energy shield. So slightly better, but we lose our extra spell suppress. Again, I don't ever play spell suppress builds. Basically, seems like getting 100% spell suppress is somewhat challenging, but not insurmountable. Losing 20% on the tree, how significant is that? I'm not exactly sure, but it does, I guess it makes life a little worse. But we do get a little bit of extra damage reduction. So mixed, but probably kind of more of an annoyance than anything. All right, one step ahead. Basically, you're at least 90% of base action speed. So that's 18% less. That's a little annoying. So it still basically does what it needs to do, which is prevent you from being slowed, but you don't get the buff from it anymore. And nearby monsters' action speed's 2% different than it was before. That's I don't know if that's even noticeable. Maybe it is. Anyways, I think people who built around Trickster are probably still building around Trickster. I guess I'm not seeing the huge nerfs to the ascendancy that people were expecting. But again, not very knowledgeable about this one, so maybe I'm wrong. Saboteur, we got a little bit more in cooldown recovery rate. Saboteur seemed to be perfectly fine ascendancy for mines and things like that. So getting a little more cooldown recovery rate, I'm sure is just a nice little perk. All right. Pathfinder, what does this one do? I didn't look at this one yet. Bonus of non-channeling skills. Um, consuming 3 charges from a flask each of the following types. Penetrate elemental resistances. You get a little bit more. You get more increased critical strike chance. You get more physical damage as extra chaos damage. Yeah, so it's a nice perk if you use this. Um, I can't recall I ever played. I played some Pathfinders before. I don't think I used this node. So, okay, we'll take the buff. Warden, well, anyways, I included the changes here. I've never understood any Warden build, and I won't try to build one. So I don't know what it means. But I guess if you use Bark Skin, is it better? It's slightly better. Yeah, no longer has a mana reservation. That seems pretty significant. Prevent 3% of spell, suppress spell damage per bark instead of 2. That seems okay. All right, nice change for Warden, I guess, if you play that. So that's my review of the 3.27 patch notes. Just because these are the patch notes is kind of not really the final word. Sometimes things will change between when the patch notes are released and when the league actually launches. And sometimes things in the league are just a little different, or they're just not quite. You read them in the patch notes, and the way that it actually feels in the game, works out in the game, can be different things. Asynchronous trade just makes life so much nicer, and trade league. I mean, I play Trade League, but I don't engage with trade that much just because it's just so annoying. You try to buy an item and, you know, you're trying to get a reasonably good price. I don't necessarily have to get the cheapest price that's listed, but so I go, you know, down the listings a little bit, pick something that's a little more expensive than the cheaper one. Maybe you message 3, 4, 5, 10, even 10 people. It's like no responses. Finally, someone responds. You go get your item, and then a trade request you put in 5 minutes ago, 3 people back. Suddenly, they're inviting you to trade. It's like it's kind of a mess. Um, so it's just going to make life a lot better. Bloodlines, second ascendancy. Whoop. Um, who knows? This could be this could have major implications for character builds. It's really hard to say. It's also going to be really interesting to see what bosses these are locked behind. You have to defeat a boss in order to unlock certain types of these bloodline ascendancies. So if you have a character that's extremely poorly suited to the boss that you need to defeat, that might be kind of interesting. I'm sure a lot of people will go on to chat and find someone they can buy the challenge from. But for those of us try to do things on their own, that's that causes a little bit of apprehension, to be honest. This other stuff, okay, it's all good, but changes here. I think Corpse Pact could be for someone like me that plays off meta builds, just tries to create some weird thing. This sounds like a fun challenge to take on, and maybe it'll work well. Seems like it'd be a lot more sustainable. And some of the situations I'm thinking of in the past where I just couldn't really sustain it in a meaningful way. Accuracy being gone, just it's kind of a quality of life thing more than anything else. But this, what we do get in place of it, kind of more significant increased cooldown recovery rate could be could be a really nice perk. Not having to go to Grave Pact, also pretty nice. So this is a good change. It's kind of more quality of life than anything, but that's really nice. All right, not having to resummon specters, kind of huge, especially for the corpse type. I think people will integrate the corpse type specters into their builds more frequently because they don't have to worry about losing them now, which is really significant. Blink arrow, mirror arrow, kind of a neat build, kind of a niche build. Not that many people play it, even though it's really strong. Pretty good league starter, but this looks pretty devastating for it, honestly. So I don't know. Not good. Application being white gem, nice quality of life. Dark Pact, who knows? Volatile Dead again with the Spell Slinger could be something this league. I know people love that build. Could be worth looking at. And this other stuff, who knows? So, anyways, that's my thoughts. I hope you have a great league. I'm gonna play some kind of experimental guardian thing with maybe minions, or I don't know exactly what. We'll just see how it goes. I really am not going to plan it out too much. I'm just going to start a guardian. You got the Sentinel of Radiance that'll carry me no matter how bad my build is, basically. I think that's my plan. Is Radiant Guardian of or Sentinel of Radiance. It pretty much crushes the campaign. All you need is some, you don't even need minion life. You just need convocation. So I'll see how it goes. Have fun.